I can't count the number of people I've heard saying how important it is that we have certainty in business and farming. We know agriculture particularly is an inherently risky business. We've seen farm income at 10-year lows, commodity prices declining. The administration continues, as you know, you probably don't really want to say this, but continues to inject more uncertainty into American agriculture. The president tells farmers to trust him, yet every day farm bankruptcies increase. Another small dairy closes, a family farm sold to an out-of-town investor. Ohio farmers are near the breaking point. I want to share just 3 or 4 lines from an article written for the Toledo Blade, which is sort of the paper of record in much of rural Northwest Ohio. As of June 2nd, only the author of the piece is Tom Henry. As of June 2nd, only 33% of Ohio's corn acreage, 18% of the state's soybean acreage had been planted. By this time of year, at least 90% of corn should have been planted, 79% of soybeans should have been planted. That's based on the most recent 5-year coverage. Farmers will tell you, as you know, Mr. Undersecretary, that years before this, they would go into the fields earlier typically. So these numbers are worse than they've been over 5 years, which is worse than it used to be. Ohio was down 61% from its most recent 5-year average for planting soybeans as of June 1st. And as farmers will tell you, even if their farms dry out enough to plant corn in another week or two, the growing season has been so compressed that smaller yields are inevitable. One farmer who's in his 60s said, "I've been farming 36 years. This is the first year I may not have 1 acre of corn." So my questions are this. You can understand my concern with Secretary Perdue's announcement that market facilitation payments won't be applied to unplanted acres. So we've seen these problems get worse and worse with climate issues. USDA provided a list of crops that would need to be planted. USDA has been unclear on whether these could be planted for cover or after the typical late planting period. From the number of inquiries my office gets from farmers sitting on their combines waiting for the water to subside, they want to know details. They're now forced to make decisions based on rumors and heightened uncertainty. My 2 questions for Dr. Johansson, if you would answer these, and I'll give them both to you and then take your time. Will USDA provide flexibility for farmers to plant later than normal for cover and be eligible for MFP? And similarly, hay and forage is expected to be in short supply due to the wet weather, of course. Will federal crop insurance provide flexibility to allow the earlier grazing or harvest of forage or haying from cover crops without penalty?
So, you know, one of the I mentioned earlier to the ranking member's questions that we didn't want to affect planning decisions with the new program. And of course, complicating that is the situation you mentioned with regard to prevent plant. We're in a very late delayed planting, and a cool, wet spring is affecting much of the corn crop as well as other commodities across the United States. We're behind in wheat, we're behind in rice, we're behind in soybeans, of course, as well. All of that will contribute to likely higher than normal prevent plant number. Of course, the crop insurance program does anticipate prevent plant, and there are a lot of conditions and a lot of provisions available to producers that are unfortunately faced with prevent plant, as for some of the producers in Ohio that you mentioned. So again, as with last year's program, we wanted this year's program to not affect the safety net provided by crop insurance, and so there are the prevent plant rules and eligibility requirements are remaining in place. I know we have been asked to look at the 2 components that you did talk about with respect to late plant and with respect to haying and grazing, and those are components of the program that we are continuing to evaluate over this period under which the rule is still undergoing changes at the Office of Management and Budget. So we'll continue to look at that. I would point out also, as you know, the President signed the supplemental disaster bill, which also does call out prevent plant in it, and so there is a interaction as well with a program that may come out following that. That is again early in its development at the department for the WIP 2.0 program that will be was authorized by by everyone here for the disasters we saw in 2018, the hurricanes and wildfires from last year, but as well as the 2019 prevent plant issues for this year. So I don't have any hard and fast answers to your questions, but certainly willing, as I mentioned to the ranking member, that we can get back to you with.
And we will be in touch on that. That is really, really important, and particularly Northwest Ohio agriculture. Mr.